are the ranking Democrat on the House Budget Committee, and of course we're talking about the debt ceiling. Let's first talk about how blasé a lot of people are about this. Like, oh, this is number 104, is that right, in terms of the vote?
Correct.
And the last 103 seem to go pretty good. Is that the wrong way to be thinking about it?
Yeah, it's an accurate but misleading way that doesn't entirely tell the whole story. So first, as I often point out, we have raised the debt ceiling 103 times since 1940. So we're 103 out of 103, a hell of a batting average.
Yeah.
However, that gives people a false confidence that somehow it's automatic, that we will never miss a deadline and that we will always succeed to raise it in the future, especially since for most of those 103 increases, the debt ceiling was not weaponized then politically the way it has become in this era of our politics. So I am confident that we will go 104 out of 104, but the sort of blasé attitude I get from some in finance and business that it's somehow guaranteed or fait accompli, I think that is a dangerous sort of mentality.
Let me ask you, especially since you've been, the highest-ranking Democrat on the Budget Committee since January. Am I correct?
That is correct. Yes.
And what is the insight into we're so polarized at this point, and that's something that has changed over the last few decades. Where are the areas essentially for what we expect people to give? So let's just take, for example, is it ever likely that the Republicans will agree to any sort of, tax increase? Is that something that there's even room for negotiation there?
So, that's essentially a separate issue than the debt ceiling, because that's about spending and taxes and spending for next year and the years beyond. The debt ceiling is essentially...
That's why you want it to be clean, though. You don't want anything to be intertwined.
Correct. The debt ceiling is a difficult concept for most ordinary people who don't follow politics to understand, in large part because the debt ceiling is an accident of history. Mm-hmm. The debt ceiling came about approximately a century ago during World War I because the Treasury Department wanted to make it easier, not more difficult, to pay debts. I think it's safe to say they did not succeed in that regard, because the debt ceiling, the way it has been practiced in recent decades, is essentially a separate vote years after spending decisions were already made. The money was already sent out the door, bought the goods that we bought. And then years later, there's this separate vote called the debt ceiling, essentially when we get the bill in the mail and we have this vote as to whether or not we're going to pay the bill. Well, America should always pay its bills. The fact that we enjoy such low interest rates, the fact that we are the world's reserve currency, is because people invest here with total, absolute confidence that the United States of America is going to pay its debts and meet its obligations. If we ever breach that debt ceiling, we would permanently lose that. It would be a costly mistake.
The credit rating agencies have already sort of, but let me go back to that point, because I fully appreciate the debt ceiling is its own unique concept, and that is perhaps one reason why you don't want these. You want a simple, declarative, we will increase the debt ceiling. It seems to become this game of chicken where people are ramming in all kinds of other agenda items during this very delicate period of time.
Just to be clear, when Donald Trump was in the White House, and I was a Democratic member of Congress for all 4 of those years, I voted to increase the debt ceiling with a Republican president. This only seems to become an issue when there is a Democratic president and Republican control of at least one of the chambers of Congress. They have gotten into an unfortunate habit, whether it was in the mid-90s under President Clinton or 2011 under President Obama, and now this year under President Biden, to use the debt ceiling as leverage in order to attempt to win some other policy gains of theirs.
Exactly.
It's a terrible mistake. I've been someone who for years now has actually been fighting to permanently reform the debt ceiling. We're the only country on earth that even really goes through this.
Yeah.
Most other economies, most other major countries, most other non-major countries as well, do not even have the concept of a debt ceiling. It has long outlived its usefulness. We need to permanently reform it to strip away this sort of political gamesmanship from it once and for all.